Hi everyone, and welcome to Stampin' 101, Back to Basics. Today we're going to be creating this Valentine's Day card. It's created from a stamp set called P.S. I Love You, and it's a stamp set that can be found on page 8 of the Occasions Mini 2012. This stamp set is really nice because it has a lot of sentiments, it has a lot of images, so it would make a lot of Valentine's Day cards or I Love You cards. Really neat. This particular Mike's Minute is going to be focusing on some steps, and that's because this card is created at the Palm Springs Public Library, and I had some creation stations where people could move around for different aspects of the creation process, and so these steps would need to be followed. The first step in the process is to take the large Real Red cardstock and the large Whisper White cardstock pieces and apply Snail to the Whisper White, all four corners in the center, and center it on the piece of Real Red cardstock. And then set that piece aside. Now we're going to take a smaller piece of Real Red cardstock, apply Snail to all four corners and the center of a smaller piece of Whisper White cardstock, and center that Whisper White in the center of the Real Red. Apply a little bit of pressure to keep it in place, and set that aside. Now we're going to create the stamped image, and to do this we're going to use the Hearts in Heart stamp from the P.S. I Love You stamp set, Real Red Classic ink, and a piece of Whisper White cardstock. Ink up your stamp really well, and you don't necessarily need to press real hard, you just need to move the stamp around. Do not rock your stamp. If you rock the stamp, you'll get ink on the edges, and that could transfer onto your white cardstock, and that's really annoying when that happens. Once your stamp is inked, position it horizontally over your Whisper White, go straight down, press, don't rock, lift up, and you'll have a perfect image every time. Once you've done that, we're going to take our heart punch, which lines up perfectly with the Hearts in Heart image. Turn the heart punch over, center it, and punch. Now you'll notice this is the old style, the retired style paper punch. Both the new style and the old style work exactly the same. I just was using the old style so I could demonstrate how they both worked. The Be My Valentine is the next thing we're going to do, and this is the sentiment for the card, and for this we're going to use the new style punch, which has the little lever on the back that unlocks the punch and allows it to open. This is a word window punch, and I absolutely love the word window punch. And the reason for that being, every sentiment in this set fits inside the word window. So we can use this and get a perfect little punch out for the modern label punch every time. So ink up the stamp, do an impression on the Whisper White cardstock, and then center that sentiment in the center of the word window. And when you have it where you want it, punch it out. And we're going to go ahead and set that piece aside. The last step that needs to be done in no particular order is to punch out the modern label. And for that, we're going to use the old style modern label punch and a piece of Real Red cardstock. Position it, punch it out. That worked so well. I love how they just kind of popped up on the punch. And then remove it, set it aside. That completes the steps that we're going to do in no specific order. We're going to turn this paper over now, and we're going to look at the steps that need to be done in a particular order, and that's because there's layering involved. So we have to do one thing before we can move on to the next step. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the large rectangle of Real Red and Whisper White cardstock that we created in step 1 of the other side of this reference, and we're going to put a strip of Snail in the center of the top and in the center of the bottom of this cardstock. Turn it over and take a 6-inch piece of Real Red 5/8 inch grosgrain ribbon, center it on the face of the card, and then fold over the top and bottom to secure the ribbon in place. Once that component is created, we're going to take out the card base. The card base is a piece of Whisper White cardstock measuring 5.5 by 8.5 inches, and it's scored at the 4 1/4 mark. And we're going to put a little dab of snail on all four corners in the center. Center it on the right-hand side of the cardstock, the card base, and press it into place. I don't fold my card bases while I'm creating the card. I wait until the end of that step, because the end of the card creation, because it's a lot easier to work on the face of the card while the card is flat. Now I'm going to create the heart in hearts, or hearts in heart component, and I'm going to apply a V of snail onto the back of the printed image, and I'm going to apply it to the smooth side of the scalloped hearts in hearts embosslets die. And this is a great little die because it mats our heart punch perfectly. And then I'm going to apply this component to the top of the square Whisper White Real Red square that we created earlier, a little V on the back. The neat thing about this is because of the texture on that scallop hearts and hearts image, or punch out rather, big shot die, what it does is it creates a little bit of dimension on the square, so it sticks up a little bit without using dimensionals, and I think that's kind of cool. Speaking of dimensionals, now what we're going to do is we're going to take Stampin' Dimensionals, and we're going to apply one in each corner on the back of that red square. And a tip that I found, I picked up at one of the conventions I went to, the Stampin' Up! Conventions, which I thought was really cool, is the demonstrator actually took her thumbnail and dug it into the paper. And it pops up the paper a little bit from the Stampin' Dimensionals, so that it's a lot easier to remove from the glue on the back. So that's just a tip I picked up. You should try it. It's not always easy to remove, but sometimes it's easy to remove. And that just kind of quickens things a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to get at that paper. Once we've done that, we're going to take this square and we're going to position it equidistant from the top and the sides, so that there's the same amount of space from the top as there is from both sides, and then press the four corners to hold it into place. Finally, we're going to create the sentiment mat. So we're going to take the Be My Valentine that we printed up earlier, and the snail fits perfectly in that word window punch. So you can just run a strip of snail across the back and then position it centered on the modern label punch. And we're going to finish this up by putting a stamping dimensional on each end. And then go ahead and remove the backing. And we'll position the sentiment anywhere you like, basically, but I kind of made it towards the top to give it a little asymmetrical look. Give it a press, and the only thing left to do is to fold the card in half, the last step. I hope you've enjoyed this version of Stampin' 101, Back to Basics. Have a great day.